Hey everyone, in this video, we're gonna go over the chapter exercise questions. So the way we will do it is that I will first read the question and then move to Minitab to show you how we conducted the analysis there to obtain the output. Then according to the output, we'll answer the questions in order. Now, it is highly recommended that you either print a hard copy of the questions or make sure you have a screen showing the exercise questions when we go through it, because when I move to Minitab, the questions will not be shown on this video anymore.
Since this is the first time we're going through the exercise questions,
I will also show you how I would expect you to answer such questions in a Word file, because that's the same requirement for the exams in this course. And all the questions will be similar to the exercise questions. I would also expect you to provide the Minitab output as well as the words that explains the results and answers the questions. For all exercise questions, the data are provided in a separate Word file. For Chapter 2 exercise, it is Chapter 2 exercise data. And for Chapter 3, it's Chapter 3 exercise data. What you need to do is to open the file, copy and paste the data into Minitab before you can perform the analysis. So let's get started with the first question. Sandy James thinks that the housing prices have stabilized in the past few months. To convince her boss, she intends to compare current prices with last year's prices. She collects 12 housing prices from one ad and calculates the mean and standard deviation of the prices. There are three parts. Part A, create descriptive statistics and graphical summary using Minitab and report mean and standard deviation. Part B, create a 95% confidence interval for the mean housing price. What does the interval tell you? Part C, suppose that the average housing price in the last year is $65,320. Test the hypothesis that the housing price has not changed significantly from last year. All right, so first of all, I want to show you the data file that I was referring to, and then I will try to show you the complete steps that I used to copy the data from Word to Minitab. So let me move to the data file. All right, so when you open this file, you will see two data tables for the two questions. For question one, there's only one column. And if you move your mouse somewhere around here, you will see this little mark, meaning you can highlight the whole table altogether instead of highlighting the numbers one by one. So I do that. I click on that little mark. The whole table is highlighted. And what you can do is you right click and select copy. What I would like to do is just use Control-C in my keyboard, copy it. Then I'm gonna move to Minitab and paste the data there. So here's the Minitab with a new worksheet. It is empty. The first cell, which is for the label, is highlighted. I'm gonna do Control-V, or you can do right click and choose paste to paste the data. So now we have the price. We have 12 of them. The sample size is 12. Let's get started with each part. Part A asks us to create summary statistics and the graphical summary. So to do that, we're gonna go to Stat, pick Basic Statistics, and pick Display Descriptive Statistics. Click on it. The variable will be price. Double click on price on the left-hand side and then click OK. So here we go. We've got the summary statistics, and especially we're interested in the mean and the standard deviation, I believe. All right, so the next one is the graphical summary. Still go back to stat, basic statistics, and pick the third one, graphical summary. Variable still price, double click on it. You would notice that there's this confidence level, meaning that this graphical summary will automatically provide the confidence interval for the mean, and you can define the confidence level. We didn't pay much attention to this during our review, so typically we just use 95% as the default. So you don't need to do anything right here. Just click on OK. We will see the summary report. In particular, for part B, we want to construct 95% confidence interval. It is shown here, right here, 95% confidence interval for mean. It's between 151,000 and 201,000. All right. I'm gonna move to part C as of right now, just to show you how to carry out the analysis within Minitab. Then we'll go to Word file to answer each questions in more details. So for the third question, we want to perform a hypothesis test. And the sample is this housing price right here. We notice that this is a small sample, only with 12 observations. So the hypothesis test that we're gonna use will be a t-test, one sample. So go back to stat and pick basic statistics. You will notice there's a list of one sample Z, one sample T, two sample T. The one we're gonna use is the one sample T, since the sample size is small. If the sample size is large, okay, you can use one sample Z. All right, so let's click on that, and you will see this pop-up window. Right now, you don't see anything yet. So we want to click in the box, and you will see that your cursor is within the box. Then the variable will appear on the left, which is the price that we're gonna use. So double click on price. We also, the purpose of this is we want to perform hypothesis test, and the hypothesized mean is the number we want to compare with. According to the question, we want to compare with $165,320. So I would type in that number. Minitab will perform the test for me automatically. So click OK. There we go. First of all, we still have the descriptive statistics, and it's even convenient that we have the 95% confidence interval. In terms of the hypothesis test, the null and the alternative are listed. We're testing if the mean is equal to the number we specified or it is different from the number. And if the mean is different from the number, that means the housing price has changed. Otherwise, the housing price is stable. So we've got the p-value here, and the p-value is 0.34. And based on that, we will make a decision whether to reject the null or not and draw the conclusion. All right, so what I'm gonna do right now is go back to the first step. I want to copy and paste the table into a Word file to answer the questions. So once you kind of put your mouse around the result, you will see this blue box popping up, and click on it. You will see an arrow on the right-hand side with a drop-down window, drop-down menu. The one we want to pick is copy or copy as picture. I like copy as picture because it will keep the format. It will not mess up. So we're gonna do copy as picture. Okay, and then move to the Word file. You want to open a new Word file. Okay, so I want to type of a few things as notation. Question number 1, and this is part A, and then I will first paste the table I just copied. Again, you can either do Control V or right click to choose paste. So there we go. That's the output for part A, one of them. And you want to do the same for the rest. All right. So for the second part, the graphical summary is right here. On the left-hand side, the first one is the descriptive statistics. The second one is the graphical summary. You click on it, you will see this big graph and table. Similarly, you want to click on the little arrow on the right-hand side to get to copy graph. Click on it. So the graph now is copied. You want to move to Word, Microsoft Word. And same thing, you want to do Control V or right click, choose paste. Now we have the second part. If you don't want the output to be so big, taking the whole space on the page, you do have the option to resize it. So you click on the picture, you can resize it to make it a little bit smaller so that you can type the words within the same page. So there we go. All right. That's part A. So for part B, we want the confidence interval, which is already reported in the resulting part A, so we do not need to copy and paste again. For part C, the hypothesis test, we want to go back to Minitab. On the left-hand side, you want to pick the last one sample T. And I would highly suggest that you copy both tables into Word. That's what I will do. But you need to go back and forth for each table. You cannot copy both tables at the same time. So I'm gonna copy the first table into Word, and then come back, copy the second table into Word. All right, so let me show you what I have within the Word document. There we go. For part C, I have the summary statistics, make it smaller, and also the test results. Now I'm gonna add the words to answer the question. For part A, we want the summary statistics, and we also want to report the mean. So the mean is equal to 176,654. And the standard deviation is equal to, and I got the number right here. Standard deviation is equal to $39,440. Okay, so that's part A. Now for part B, we want to construct the confidence interval and interpret it. So let's see. We will say the 95% confidence interval is, I usually enclose the two numbers within parentheses. The lower end is 151,595. The upper end is $201,713. Next, we want to interpret the confidence interval. So we created this interval for the average housing price. And therefore, we can say the confidence interval tells us that the average housing price for the whole population is between these two numbers. Save time, I'm gonna copy them and paste it. And do and. That's the interpretation for the confidence interval. Okay, for part C, I want to move to the next page because it's getting close to the end. We performed the hypothesis test to see if the housing price has changed from last year or not. We got the p-value. And so what we want, since the hypotheses are already stated, we don't need to do that. So we say based on the p-value, which is 0.341, I'll say we cannot reject the null hypothesis. The reason is because the p-value is not below 5%, which is the default significance level, okay? So just a quick review for p-value in terms of hypothesis test. If p-value is less than 5%, we will reject the null hypothesis. If the p-value is not less than 5%, we cannot reject the null hypothesis. And our question here is the second scenario. Okay, so our conclusion is that we conclude that the housing price has not been changed because that's virtually the same number as last year. Okay, so that's question number 1. Now let's move to question number 2. I just need to switch my screen. Okay, so question number 2. Anna Sheehan is the manager of the Spendwise supermarket chain. She would like to be able to predict paperback book sales per week based on the amount of shelf display space feet provided. Anna gathers data for a sample of 11 weeks. Part A, plot a scatter diagram. Part B, what kind of relationship exists between these two variables? And part C, compute the correlation coefficient. Is the relationship strong, weak, or non-exist? Okay, so it's a basic question asking you to explore the relationship between two variables. Let's move to Minitab and start the analysis. All right, so for question 2, you may want to start with a new worksheet. What you can do is to go to this cross mark right here, click on it, you will get a new worksheet. That's what I usually prefer. And then you can go back to your Word file, copy the data. So I'm gonna do paste. There we go. 3 columns in this data. The first column is the week, second column is the number of books sold, and the third column is the shelf space. We are interested in the second and the third column. Let's start with the scatter plot for our data set. We want to go to graph, and the first one is scatter plot. So click on it. We will always use the simple one, at least for our course, that's the case. So click on OK. And we do need to differentiate between the Y variable and the X variables. The way you identify that is to ask which variable is depend on the other one. Then that is the Y variable, which we'll call dependent variable. So between books sold and shelf space, I know the number of books sold will be depending on the shelf space. And therefore, books sold is the dependent variable Y, then shelf space is the independent variable X. So whenever you double click on the variable on the left-hand side, it will be filled into the box automatically. Then we just click on OK to get the scatter plot. There we go. Now, roughly looking at it, we can tell that the two variables are strongly and positively related because basically these observations form a straight line. Next, we want to obtain the correlation coefficient. So we want to go to stat and go to basic statistics and pick correlation. And we just double click both of the variables to select them, click OK. The actual correlation number is given at the end of the graph and also in the last table. We're gonna just use the last table for that. So now we are ready to copy and paste the Minitab output into the Word file to continue. So I will do copy graph, go to my Word file, paste it, and come back to get the correlation table and copy as picture and go back to Word to copy and paste it. Now I want to switch to Word file to show you what I have there. Okay, so Control V, we have it pasted. And these two are for question number 2. We just need to label them and answer the questions in words. Okay. Question number 2, part A, asks us to create the scatter plot. Okay. For part B, we want to talk about the relationship between these two variables. What we observe is there is a positive relationship between these two variables. That's what we can say about it, according to the scatter plot. Because the trend is going up, so that's a positive relationship. Part C, I don't want to type there, so I need to go to the previous page. And for part C, the correlation coefficient, so we're gonna say the correlation coefficient is 0.95, which is close to 1. Therefore, the correlation is strong. I'm gonna add is positive and strong. Okay, so that's basically what I would expect from you in terms of answering similar questions during the exam. Again, I want to emphasize that I do need you to have words answer the specific question. Just providing the output is not enough. And actually the output is just a tool that facilitate us to answer the questions. All right, so that's all we have for this video. And let me know if you have any questions.